Welcome to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundee Motors, Ireland's favourite car buying website, with the widest selection of cars from certified, trusted dealerships. Most Irish car drivers find their next car on Dundee. And welcome to the Drivers Republic podcast, which is a podcast hosted by Paddy Common, who's down there. Hello, Paddy.
Hello.
And me, Mark Noble, who's up here, wherever up here is. I do have to ask, Paddy, is this a traumatic time of year for you with Paddy's Day and Paddy's Weekend? Was there lots of slagging growing up?
No, I think I always enjoyed it because I was one of those days where it was like it's your day rather than people having a go. So no, it's always a nice celebration. So yeah, looking forward to it now, I must say.
Well, happy Paddy's Day in advance.
Thank you very much.
So I'm a little bit hungover. I don't mind telling you.
Well, that's good. And who's at fault for that?
Gasper, Caroline, Stuart, and basically Mark McGrath. Although Mark McGrath these are all people, lovely people who work at Cupra Ireland. Cupra.
Right.
Some of them went to bed very early, but Caroline did not. So
and she
Caroline,
obviously forced you to forced alcohol down your throat, right?
She did. So we were at the lovely Paris Court Hotel for the launch. Well, not so much a launch of any particular car, just the range of Cupra, from the revised Leon to the Born VZ, which is their 300 plus brake horsepower. Bonkers EV, and the new Terramar is there, and the Tavascan, and they have a lot of product now to offer.
For people who don't know the difference between the models, because we brush over those, what's a Terramar, what's a Tavascan?
So a Tavascan is essentially an ID5 / Enyaq Coupe offering from Cupra, arguably a far more dramatic. I only saw one on the road actually an hour ago on the school run, and very striking looking car, but it has the same underpinnings as all of these cars, so various outputs, powertrain, well, not so much powertrains, but outputs, and it's kind of just sort of the start of the year they started to land. Just a striking looking car. It has this huge spine inside the dash that kind of runs the right way through the car and towards the dashboard. I mean, Cupra they are part of the Volkswagen group, for people who aren't aware. They're a very fast growing brand in Europe, but they're also quite fast growing in Ireland. Now, they were hands up honest and said, look, we were growing from a very small number 4 years ago, but we sort of doubled our brand awareness. We're selling a lot more cars in 2025 than we have before. So they're making a mark there. I suppose from a marketing point of view, it's just a very interesting car, because obviously they've come from the family of Seat, and they've just put sexier looking cars on the road, and people are engaging with them. But they did clarify for people, there's been lots of rumours about Seat over the last couple of years. It seems to have been decided by Volkswagen Group that Seat are here to stay. They have a loyal customer base, not a huge customer base, but a very loyal one, and they just want to keep buying Seats.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I go back to the time when I was there and Cupra was launched or was starting to launch. I think a lot of people were very skeptical. We were included, that this was going to be a success, but they seem to have managed to pull it off. I mean, it's one of those brands now which is appealing. It has been accepted, and the cars look great. They really look great. It's a pretty lineup, and customers seem to be embracing them as well. So yeah, it seems to have been a success so far. But good to see Seat will continue in some regard, because the likes of the Ibiza in particular, what a great little car. I had an Ibiza F4 for 6 months, and what a brilliant little machine. So it would be a shame to see those cars disappear.
They will be launching 2 new cars at the end of the year, including a new Ibiza. And sorry, just to answer the latter part of your question, the Terramar is essentially the Kodiaq, the Tiguan version of their car.
Okay, 5 seats are only for the
5 seats only from memory. But interestingly, perhaps, of all the brands in the VW group, Cupra are the only ones who will be bringing the 265 brake horsepower 2-litre petrol in that car to this country. You can't get it in the Tayron. You can't even get the 4Motion in the Tayron at the moment. Maybe that'll change.
Right.
So if you want that kind of, if you've got a family, but you like the look of the Cupra Terramar, and you do like your right foot when conditions allow, that's the only option you're going to have for that engine, which is mad.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And
So
I
I
think
mean,
I think the only
sorry.
reason they're bringing it is because the kind of heritage of Cupra that it was born. I would have say it obviously as a high performance version, and that is the case in Europe. A lot of their cars are like, we're going to have 1.5s and hybrids, and they'll offer them as well. But like, they also are the people who put the Golf 4 engine into lots of their cars, and they sell very well in mainland Europe.
Yeah, I mean the original Cupra models were great as well. I remember some of those. I hadn't a beat the Cupra at one time. Paddy McGrath, friend of the show, set fire to the brakes of it on me. So thanks for that, Paddy.
Intentionally or by
Well,
accident?
we had a product day at Mondello Park, and I put my beat the Cupra in, and Paddy was doing a few laps and set fire to the brakes. But it's fine. It's
Actually, I
fine, Paddy.
also, speaking of issues that have arisen, and you weren't at fault here either, a man told me last night about a time you were in the back of a new Audi Allroad that ended up in the water.
Yep, that was the launch of the Audi Allroad, and it was in Wicklow, and the place Tough Terrains was there. I think it would eventually became Orange Works, but I was sitting in the back of of an Audi Allroad, and we were driving through a puddle, and water started to come into the doors and into the sills, and eventually flooded the feet, and some very embarrassed Germans were furiously milling around. But yeah, that car ended up being pretty much written off. I think I don't think it was ever the same again, but it had to be dried out. But yeah, that was
Oh,
quite
God.
a few years ago. That was about 2002, I think.
And that was a brand new car, obviously, at
Yeah,
the time.
brand new car, the first Audi Allroad. Yeah.
Oh.
I remember. I don't remember who was
Oh.
driving. It was probably the man who told you, but I won't embarrass him on air.
He did say the instructor told him to keep going in his defense, but I don't know.
Not the proudest
maybe
moment.
maybe there's a different outcome there. Look, it could happen to a bishop,
It
as
could
I
happen to
often
Bishop, but we will have
say.
Gaspar on the show in the coming weeks, I believe. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, Gasper is the brand director of Cupra Ireland. He worked in Cupra in the UK and Ireland and Netherlands, and then he decided to actually settle and make Ireland home. Just looks after the Irish market now, but has a lot of experience in automotive, and is from Barcelona, as he would say. So very nice man, very charismatic, very funny. I often find as well, people they sort of nearly apologise for their English when they come to these things, but you're usually kind of looking at them going, what are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with your English, I wish it was the other way
Yeah,
around for most of us.
it's probably better than your Spanish, I suspect, right?
Exactly.
Well, yeah, this week I outside I have the new Audi e-tron, the A6 e-tron, and I'm in love,
Nice.
Mark. I have to say, I'm in love.
Mm.
I would defy anyone, and there's lots. I get lots of comments on TikTok, and you get lots of comments, I'm sure, on your YouTube videos of EVs are rubbish, EVs are scrap, EVs are no good. I would defy anyone to drive this car and not want an EV because they've absolutely nailed it. They really have nailed it. And in terms of everything, the interiors first class, the handling beautiful, it's comfortable, it looks great. It's an Avant, so it's got a huge boot. It's got a huge battery, 100 kilowatt hour battery. So probably a 600 kilometer car. Not sure about the €1,800 virtual mirrors, but the €2,000 Bang & Olufsen system with the speaker headrests is quite nice. Now, this is not a cheap
Nice.
car, Mark. 92,000 with €20,000 of options.
Oh.
So yeah, we're in
Now
at
there
about
is
€114,000.
isn't there a 70 grand ish version?
Yeah, there is, but I mean, the options list is where it all gets pretty fun. I mean, for things that you would probably get on other models like adaptive cruise control is the guts of €900. And there's plenty of other models that you'll get that almost thrown in, so you would, the options list is not for the faint-hearted.
Those mirrors, I saw this car when you collected it on Monday, and the mirrors, I haven't seen them probably on the original e-tron SUV perhaps. So they're, for people who remember those mirrors, they're cameras basically, but they kind of protrude from the car quite a bit.
They do, and look, you're just thinking, it has made me think where I've parked the car. I was going into Cork City Centre the other day, and I was like, don't know if I should park this in the street, because it does. It would lend itself to somebody hammering it off. I find they're really good though. It takes you a couple of seconds to get used to them, but especially at nighttime, the clarity of the picture and their night ability is something that I think is really impressive. Would I get them? Absolutely not, because it's just another thing potentially to go wrong. But as a
Yeah.
car, wow, what a car!
Yeah, it's a dark bluey green
Mal
color.
Malpelo blue, apparently. So, but yeah,
Malpelo
it's
blue.
almost like we would have called it a petrol blue color, even though I don't know why. I don't think petrol was ever blue, but no, stunning,
I don't know
stunning
why
looking
that
car.
was. Yeah.
Yeah,
And just from your insight of doing this previous life where you would have been involved in deciding what goes on press cars, when someone in Audi was speccing that car, do you have to follow a certain list from Germany? Can you just go, like you've won the lotto? Where are there any rules when you're speccing a press car?
well, I can only speak from how I did it, and I went like I've just won the lotto. So, I did at the time. I did remember getting some compliments about how I spec press cars, but no. Usually, look, you're showing as much of the car as you can. So there's no point, asking a journalist to imagine what the cameras are like or imagine what the
Mm.
21-inch wheels are like. You put them on, and some dealer has the task of selling it on again. But in the case of Skodas, there were certainly some dealers who really put their hand up for them. But yeah, it's the option of going crazy. I remember with the Volkswagens in particular, we would have one or two normal ones, and then there would be one or two where you would just go absolutely batshit crazy and put everything on it. And those would be wonderful cars to buy secondhand because they were, almost unique.
Yeah.
In other markets, there is a specific line for the press vehicles. Didn't apply to Ireland, but there would be a specific line where the cars were thoroughly checked, and a certain standard of options had to be on it. But we had a little bit more leeway in our own market.
And rumors, of course, of that, particularly for mainland Europe, was that some brands that knowing this car that they're producing, like physical car, would be going on a press fleet. There would be maybe a little bit of extra carpeting added in, some extra soundproofing. It's not unknown for that to have gone on, and maybe still
Yeah,
does.
yeah, I've heard it. I've heard it's happened. Not necessarily from the ones I worked for, but I've heard it was the case. But let's just say for some brands there would be special attention paid to the ones that would end up in magazine articles or in certain high profile TV shows, for example.
Also, the weekend just gone, you were on a plane,
Yeah,
or was
I
it a
was on
boat?
a. I wasn't. No, I was on a plane. I flew to Newcastle with a good friend of mine, and went to a classic car auction over in Newcastle, and you know what? It was brilliant, and it would be something that I would encourage anyone to do. My friend Robert, he goes over quite a bit, buys a few classic cars himself, but we went over, and this place is a couple of metro stops away from the city centre in Newcastle. It, 4 quid in, I think it was something like that. But I couldn't get over some of the stuff. I mean, it just makes you think, right? In Ireland, we are really missing out on the ability to pick up interesting cheap cars and just for a bit of fun. I'll give you a few examples. There were some of the models you'd certainly remember. So the Ford Mondeo ST200, really interesting car from 2000, that sold for €950. The Chrysler Crossfire, which
Oh God.
was is a car only some people would love, but it's an interesting car, which was 3.2 liter SLK engine, probably pretty much a Mercedes SLK underneath. That was under €1,000 as well. I think it was €850.
I know
They
a
had
guy
a
who traded a Mark IV or 32 Golf for one of them, and everyone was like, "What
oh
are
my
you
god,
doing?"
that was a
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah.
Yeah, because the
And when you
R32
look at the
Golf
price
would
of
be
the
about
R32
50
now,
grand now.
yeah, oh, like it's
Yeah, that was a
shocking.
mistake. But yeah, some of the stuff they had was incredible, and it's the kind of thing that now obviously you'd need the ones that are over 30 years of age for it to make any sense, because VRT wise and anything a little bit younger, God knows what you would get. But there was a
Yeah,
beautiful TVR there, Camara, and I mean this thing was Concours, and that went for 12 grand. There was some really, Boxster, not really nice Boxster S was £7,500.
Wow.
But as a day out, and there's other ones like Anglia car auctions as well. If you just wanted a nice day out, flight costs us 30 quid. We had our lunch in a sort of dog and duck pub, and we were back by 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening on the Ryanair flight again. But a proper petrol heads day out, and though you should check out some of those in the UK because they're really, really fun.
I'm back by 5:30. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, brilliant. Like first 7:30 flight in the morning and 5:30 flight back. We were and easy to get in and out of, and it was just enough time, to see everything you'd want to see. So look up some of those car auctions in the UK because they're great. And again, if you can get a cheap flight into East Midlands or Gatwick or wherever, but the Newcastle one I would recommend because it's so easy to get to and really super cheap.
By the way, later on this episode of the podcast, we will be talking about a couple of things: road safety in Ireland, which is it's something that constantly needs to be spoken about, and our interviews will continue with the managing director of Volkswagen Ireland, Mr. Alan Bateson, who will be chatting to us about his career and working for VW for quite a long time now, and lots of questions put to him a little bit later on in the podcast. I have been also getting a lot of feedback this week about Mr. Olivier Francois, who was our guest last week from Fiat.
Okay.
Some people were asking me, was there anyone looking at him when he was just talking at freewheeling? I said, no. Someone asked you, had he had a glass of wine? I said, no. So if you missed that episode, catch it on last week. He was fairly honest.
He certainly did freestyle, and I can imagine being his PR handler, I would have been pulling my hair out a little bit, but yeah, made good copy at least. Car, I've just actually finished watching the video of you, Nobby on Cars on YouTube. Is the Skoda Elroq, and that's going to be a big seller. And you're the first Irish journalist to drive the car in Ireland, of course, being a man of your stature. So, how does it feel being in the car on Irish roads in particular?
It's nearly been a year since I drove it because I couldn't do the international drive of this car last year. I did do the covered drive, and that was back in Amsterdam, I think almost a year ago. So it is actually nice to, be on your own familiar roads, driving the car on what we call the right side. And yeah, it's a lovely car. I have noticed a couple of things about it that are probably part of cost cutting that we're seeing in lots of cars. And it was only, and this is the thing, you do kind of need a few days with a press car to kind of figure bits out and notice things. Taking for a few hours it's just not enough. So does everyone remember the little rubber handle in the boot of a Skoda for helping you close the heavy boot?
Yeah.
It's gone. There's no 12-volt charger. Now, I don't know if this is part of a pack. There is one in the boot, but there isn't one up front. And there's no dash cam. So Skoda, over the last years, have been brilliant with putting a USB-C port in the rearview mirror housing, plastic. And it means you can easily hook up your dash cam. You're not putting cables through the pillars or any of that. That's gone. Now, I don't know if that was ever going to go in because it's a brand new model. But that was just the boot thing. If they ever get rid of the umbrella in Skoda, there is going to be war.
Yeah, there will be war. There'll be mutiny. But it struck me from what you were saying on the video that obviously you can the car can end up being quite expensive if you go up the food chain in it. But for most people, you're still going to be able to get something decent in the late 30s.
Yes. So my own parents have ordered one, and there's one. It's on the way any day now. And they certainly wouldn't have bothered with Sportline. Sportline is something that has really become very popular with Skoda, and it certainly improves the look of a lot of their cars. Sometimes it'll give you a slightly lower suspension, nicer bucket seats. With the Elroq, there's a couple of interior packs that change the seatbelt color, much brighter interior. The seats are still actually quite bolstered, which yes, the RS will be a little bit nicer, but it's quite a jump. So instead of paying €800 for the different packs, I think Loft is the standard one. It's gonna cost the guts of nearly 50 grand to get a Sportline Elroq, and that's where the price is just too dear. And I get the sense that from Skoda themselves, Skoda Ireland, they kind of agree. They're like, look, if you put some nice wheels and maybe 1 or 2 levels up of the interior with a nice color, just keep it like that. You don't need to get a sport line. Obviously you can, but I just don't know if it needs it.
But surely you can just kick up a fuss on YouTube and they'll drop the price by $5,000 on the sport line, no?
I think
It's not
that's
how it works now.
not how it works, and especially with a new model. But I believe Skoda are making 600 of these cars a day.
Wow.
There is
So
huge
yeah,
demand
if
for it.
anyone says there's no demand for EVs, that's it's not quite true.
So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is a baby Enyaq. It's still got a 470 litre boot. It's got a turning circle as good as a Fiat 500. There's not as much rear leg room, but still very satisfactory rear leg room. And it's a car that if you don't put a single option on it after all the grants, is €36,000 for the smaller batteries. There's 3 different levels of battery. I don't know if they're bringing the X version, the all-wheel drive version, to Ireland.
Are you in that car all week? Are you spending a lot of time in that week, or is it just a brief drive?
So it's I haven't been traveling this week, but I've nearly made life as tricky for me. I have also outside my house an Alfa Junior Veloce, which is the 270 brake horsepower version of the Junior, and I have an XPeng sitting in MDL that I need to collect tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
So I was thinking of maybe just buying a little transporter, and I could just chuck all of my cars on the back. So I've been trying to dip in and out of them all, to be honest with you.
I guess the question is, and maybe one for next week is you've driven Kia EV3, you've driven Elroq. It'll be which one is better.
Yeah, and people are asking me that on YouTube, and it's a hard one to answer. I mean, the Kia has.
We might need to put it to the test, will we?
It'd be lovely. I was thinking of this. It would be a lovely twin test. So yeah,
we'll have to try and make that happen.
Get yourself a Kia EV3, please. The Kia is no doubt more advanced in some of the tech on it. The software will probably be a little more robust, although I haven't had any issues with this car. I just want to clarify. But, if you were comparing it to an Enyaq, in some ways, it'd be a bit more easy to answer the question. Like, the Elroq has battery conditioning, so you can heat up the battery on the way to a charger to get fast charging. That wasn't a thing for Volkswagen Group EVs up till fairly recently. It doesn't have vehicle to load. The Kia does. But also the Kia in a GT line is kicking the arse off 50 grand. So they're very, very similar on prices. I think it's one of those things. It's really just going to come down to personal preference.
Yeah, the Elroq is certainly, it's pretty but more conventional looking, whereas the EV3 is definitely a lot more radical looking as well. Yeah. So I think that might polarize it for sure. I would imagine the Kia's battery probably behaves a little bit better in really cold conditions. Is there a heat pump in the
Not a standard?
It's
a 1,200 optional extra on all levels. Whereas on the EV3, on the GT line, I think, or certainly from maybe level 2 up, you do get a heat pump on the EV3.
Yeah, so and I certainly was really impressed over the winter when I had the EV3. It was how it performed. It was given consistent range, consistent return during really, really poor conditions. So you really know. I think I find that with a lot of the Korean brands, you really know where you stand with the battery return. You think, right, okay, this is going to return the 300 or 400 it's due to do without too much fuss, no matter what the conditions are.
Now, the Skoda, or there's just so many names in my head, the Elroq WLTP figure is about 16 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and I saw that car yesterday doing in 8 degrees, 17, and that's the 280 brake horsepower version.
And look, we're going to be getting to the stage soon, I think, as well, where we're not going to be too worried about range as much as we were. Once cars are getting over 300, certainly over 400, you shouldn't really be fretting too much about where you're going.
No, I don't think so. I mean, that car arrived to my house the other night with 500 kilometers range on it, and obviously that's a gasometer, but it's definitely, from my driving the last few days, would be a car. If I owned it, I'd be probably just over a week in between charges,
which is really impressive. You made the point in your video, but that you're talking about almost a tenth of the price of filling it up in inverted commas compared to a petrol car, a Karoq version.
A Karoq is a 50-litre tank. I think a litre of petrol at the moment is about 180, and yeah, it's you genuinely will be able to charge and fill that battery technically speaking, for a
We
10th.
want to finish off part one of this week on a sad enough note, in that we've heard this week that Ford are set to stop production of the Ford Focus November of this year, after almost 30 years. Mark, what are your memories of the Focus?
Is it that long? Wow. My memory of the
1998.
Well, first of all, look, the RS obviously was. I still remember that episode on Top Gear back in 2002. I think it was. That was a 50,000 sterling car from memory. It was just an iconic car. It was looks wise maybe a little bit ahead of its time. It did need a Z-Tech trim. You know, the Gia trim looked a little bit meh. But just the design of it, the alloys, the front nose, the kind of crisscross grille, the way the rear lights went up into the higher, frame of the car. Dash was a little bit strange. I actually had one. Bought one in 2002. The dash was never
So you
something.
had a Mark 1.
Yeah. The dash was never particularly impressive, particularly the center area. There's this bulbous kind of curve on it that housed your switch gear for the air, and it was just too much space for three buttons, really. But
it was Ford's new edge design philosophy. That was, but it was a groundbreaking design compared to the Escort.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember
the first. Did
they have McPherson? I think it was one of there was a multi-link. There was definitely something that I remember a big deal being.
It was independent rear suspension, which was new for the Focus. And that first generation ran until 2004. Second generation, we got the RS featuring 2.5-liter turbocharged 5-cylinder with 305 horsepower.
Yeah, what a car.
Third generation came in 2011 until 2018. That was the EcoBoost engine, which on TikTok people are telling me how they have all sorts of problems with, so not their finest hour.
Yeah.
But that RS model went up to 350 horsepower in 2016.
Incredible.
With all-wheel drive, so quite a lot of performance.
Second gen ST, that was a 2.3 petrol, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was a 5-cylinder.
I think. It was 5-cylinder petrol engine. Yeah, exactly. Someone will correct Christopher wrong, but yeah, the STs were really, really good examples as well. I remember initially the STs. There was an ST 170, which was in the early Mark 1, which was quite a fun car at the time.
Yeah,
but the power went up significantly over the years.
I test drove one of them. I was trying to decide between a Mark 4 Golf GTI, which was 150 brakes, a little bit less, versus one of them. And the ST Focus was €35,000. The Golf at the time was 27. So there was quite an increase to get into that Focus, which just didn't make sense. And I was always thinking of residuals. It was like, you'll sell a Golf GTI easier than an ST Focus at the time, anyway.
Yeah, I think it was probably VRT at the time, which made the Focus a little bit more expensive. But yeah, that 2.5-liter or ST model has become a bit of a cult classic. Really, you see a lot of the forums and a lot of social media people are talking about that as being a car to covet. So really, really fun car that to drive.
Nice Recaro seats, good alloy wheels, bright orange color, and there was the kind of the Ford blue as well available. Yeah, it's a sad time. I mean, it's a bit like a lot of people learn to drive in a Ford Fiesta, but I'd say a lot of people also perhaps learn to drive in their mother or father's Ford Focus, and right up to the current generation, like, they're a cracking car to drive.
They are. They made, they were, when it came out especially, and then as it's gone on, it was always the driver's car in the hatchbacks. It was much sharper to drive than something like a Golf or an Astra. So but like the Fiesta, which was as well, the Focus really was the one if you wanted to have a bit of crack and have a bit of fun in a car in a back road. That it just had a suspension setup which felt like a hot hatch, even if it was powered by a wheezy small petrol engine.
Mine was a 1.4. I remember there was a 1.6. Then I think there was a 2-liter petrol.
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
but it was that was my last Ford. Then I'm fairly sure I left them then. Although I would still say the last gen Ford Fiesta ST, 200 brake horsepower. I think one of my favorite press cars I've ever had. Incredible fun.
Yeah, what a car!
And it was 29 grand.
So hopefully Ford hopefully Ford don't lose their way in terms of producing fun cars. I know the Capri was launched this week, which it's a fine SUV, but it's not a fun car to drive particularly. But the end of the focus is down to we believe SUVs and EVs, and the focus will be on. Pardon the pun. Focus will be on EVs from here on in. Maybe we will see an EV focus, but for now, the focus is no more.
Well, a lot of people have said if they just called the Capri the Focus, no one would have got very upset about it. But obviously someone else knows more. I am driving the electric Puma next month in Barcelona. So I'll let you know how I get on with that.
Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good as well. So yeah, hopefully it might be reasonably fun to drive, because the Puma, do you remember the original Puma? What a fun little car.
Yes.
And it was before your time, but there was a press car, the Ford Puma Racing, which was one of the finest cars I've ever driven. It was a special built in the UK. If you find one, anyone finds one, buy one, because it was outstanding. It had that, exhaust that sparked and cracked as you change gear, and it was wide. It was a wide body car with cargo seats. Amazing performance car.
I haven't seen one of them in the longest time, but yeah, what a car.
Yeah, amazing car. That press car got a hard time, I'm sure.
No doubt. But look, a reminder of some of the great cars Ford made, and now they're kind of in a bit of a midlife crisis of what are we? What do we sell in Europe? The Puma was the best-selling car in the UK in 2023. So, to be talking about them in kind of slow sales talk a mere 2 years on is kind of mad.
Yeah, it is, and the fact that we have no Fiesta and now no Focus is a strange position for people of our generation to be in, anyways. But, to hear that.
Also, when we're looking at Instars, we're looking at ID1 All, we're looking at Dacia Spring, and this, like, they're kind of just giving up this space where they owned it. I was talking to somebody recently who sells cars for a living, and they were talking about people who just would come in every year or every other year and change their Fiesta for maybe even the same color again. And it was like those customers have just left this dealership because they have nothing to offer them, and they're gone to, I don't know, whoever.
Well, they'll be in an Inster, I'm sure, because from talking to anyone who's been in the Inster, it's ticking a lot of boxes for people who've never even looked at an EV before.
I'm seeing a lot of them on the road. I was sitting in a cafe the other day for about an hour and a half, and I counted 4 of them driving past.
Yeah, it's an impressive car. So we're looking forward. Focus no more. But coming up after the break, what have we got, Mark?
So Alan Bateson, a man who was he was obviously in VW when you worked there, but he wasn't involved in passenger cars then, was he?
No, he's commercial vehicles, boss of commercial vehicles. Really interesting character, really innovative, not afraid to take risks. And I think that comes across when we speak to him later on.
And if you ever meet him in person, ask him about his Bentley Continental GT story. That's all.
We didn't ask him about that.
No, I don't.
We should have probably.
I don't think he'll say it on a podcast. But if you ever meet him for a pint, buy him a pint and ask him for the Bentley Continental GT story. He's coming up.
Noted.
Part 2. Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Motors, Ireland's favourite website for car buying. With more certified trusted dealers than anywhere else, you're sure to find the right car for you on dundeel.ie. Don't know about you, Paddy, but the beauty for me of the podcast, and compared to the YouTube stuff, very, very different offerings for both, but it means we get to talk to people like Alan Bateson.
Yeah, we're delighted to be in Liffey Valley to talk to Alan Bateson, who's brand director of Volkswagen Passenger Cars. Alan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, and you're very, very welcome to the headquarters here to Volkswagen Passenger Cars.
Thank you. Lovely view from Alan's office, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's stunning, actually. Yeah,
I can see the NCT Centre.
And the Dublin Mountains.
And the Dublin Mountains over that side. Dual aspect, no less.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I think a good place to start, Alan, would be really with the heritage of Volkswagen in Ireland. There's such a heritage, and this year Volkswagen brand are celebrating 75 years in Ireland. Talk to us a little bit about the link and the bond between Volkswagen and Ireland specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. This year is a really important year for us. 75 years. One of one of the only brands in Ireland to actually be celebrating such a milestone. There's not many brands that have hit 75 years in Ireland yet. So we've so much heritage. If you look at it today, we've approximately 250,000 people driving Volkswagens in Ireland on Irish roads, passenger cars. And if you look at how many people have touched Volkswagen since we started in 1950, it's somewhere close to 2 million people have driven Volkswagen cars, between either buying them new or the second cycle or third cycle in many cases, because the average Volkswagen car is in operation for anything up to 15, 16 years on average. So it hits many, many owners over that time. And the heritage, Volkswagen is part of many, many families in this country. We've seen that, done a lot of work for celebrating 75 years and marking this special year. And the people we've spoken to really have an affection for the Volkswagen brand and have a story linked to the Volkswagen brand. So I think that's what makes us the brand that we are in Ireland today,
I know you have a very special car in Ireland at the moment. Tell us about that, the Beetle that's here and the story behind it.
Yeah, so for people that know, the first Volkswagen ever built outside Germany was built in Dublin on the Shelburne Road. And that was built in what we call CKD, or completely knocked down state, shipped out of Germany into Ireland. Taxation rules and so forth at the time made it advantageous to do it that way. And it was followed, many other manufacturers in Ireland did the same type of CKD build. But the first Beetle that was built in Ireland, the Balls Ridge Beetle as we affectionately call it, was returned to Germany many, many years ago. And through permission of the board, they gave us possession of this vehicle for this year. Maybe, you never know, it might not go back ever again, but we have some really exciting plans. We were out over the last number of weeks taking photographs in iconic places around Dublin and around Ireland with it, and they'll be used for digital media in the future, and putting together a storyline that properly does the justice to the Volkswagen brand in its 75th year.
So, Alan, let's jump back, seeing as we're on a kind of a history lesson. Let's talk about you and your career, first of all. Have you always been an automotive person, or has there been other career areas?
I always have been automotive, but funny enough, I didn't start there. So my father was an engineer, and at the age of, I would say, 13, 14, I was brought in on midterm breaks, summer holidays, to work with him in the engineering side of the business. My life was to be a mechanical engineer, was to go to UCD to do it, and about 4 weeks before I was to start that course, I was working in Dublin airport and had the misfortune of an angle grinder being put straight through my knee and kneecap at full speed.
Ow.
And to this day, the only reason I'm here is that it cauterized everything as it went through and stopped any blood flow. I was collected that day. I was supposed to play for St. Vincent's. I was heavily involved in Gaelic, so overnight my Gaelic career was finished. Paul Clark, a famous Dublin footballer, was the ambulance driver who collected me. And when I asked him, did he think it was a Thursday when it happened? Could I play on the Sunday? He said, I think it looks likely that we could get you on the pitch. And my leg was hanging off, and Ray Moran, a very well-known orthopaedic surgeon, took me into Beaumont, and over the course of a year fixed it. But at that stage, I decided mechanical engineering wasn't for me. Cars was probably my first love, but then became automotive engineering, and I went after that, and subsequently went on to do business degree and law also, and then was taken over that course of time into Toyota Ireland. Started my career with Toyota and spent 7 years with Toyota Ireland, then moving on to the Citroen brand and the Gowan Group for 7 years, and then 15 years ago today, or this year, I joined Volkswagen when it set up as a national sales company. So I am now coming up to 28 years in the business, and loved every minute, would never leave the automotive business as long as I can stay in it, or I'm allowed to stay in it.
It must. I mean, I know it's a podcast, but it must be an amazing scar.
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of stitches, and yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things, and it's really led me to believe something. People talk about a glass half full, half empty.
Yeah.
And Ray Moran said to me, "You can be happy that you have a leg still attached,
Absolutely.
rather than not having it." So, you have to live in optimism sometimes, and always try to be optimistic.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that story. I think most fellas can feel that.
Yeah.
So in terms of your Volkswagen career, where did you start within the Volkswagen business? Where was the first port of call?
Yeah, so I was brought into the company. I'd done sales and after sales role, but a lot of my career was in the after sales area of the business. And I was asked to come in to try and give strategy to after sales. And I remember sitting with you, Paddy, in the early days, and we brought in something as simple as the customer promise, which was 10 promises to customers in after sales. We lived up to each one of them, including price matching, independent repairers, in terms of what the customer should expect when they come in for proper levels of service. I'm a real believer is you may have to pay a premium in some cases, but you should get an amazing customer experience for that. And that's something we focused on. And we developed a real strong strategy over 3 to 4 years in the after-sales business and saw record results come out of it because we gave customers what they deserved.
A lot of people who are listening maybe don't understand what after sales is or the benefit of after sales to a business. Can you give us an idea just simply what the benefits of it are to a business?
In many dealerships, after sales is the profit generation that keeps the business running, and you have to sell labour hours, you have to sell parts, and they all generate a profit, but you have to find the right provision and price point to make sure that you're maximising that. That's something we really focused on, giving customers an excellent service. And yes, sometimes it doesn't happen every time that's excellent. That's what our job is, to try and strategically manage it. But I suppose after sales is key to any automotive business. You cannot have sales, and you will not have sales if you don't have an excellent after sales provision. And that's what we worked on, and we were open with the public of what we wanted to do, showcasing that 10-point promise that worked for many, many years. Yes, it's evolved over time, but it certainly gave the basis for some brilliant growth and a change of behaviour in terms of how we treated customers in terms of after sales. If they're not looked after in after sales, they won't return to buy the next car in the long run. You know?
I was actually going to say to you, is from your knowledge, is that a really good way of retaining a customer if they do stay in the network? Are they more likely then to stay with you as a brand, go and buy their next car?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how you manage the customer's expectations, and it's how you manage their relationship with the brand. You know, every product from any industry can give problems, can have issues. It's how you deal with those issues. And I always say that to dealers. It's not that you try to say that you'll never have problems. There is no product that is problem-free per se. So it's how you deal with it and how you work with the customer. I'm very close to that. I try to live to try and assist any customer openly, and I think you have seen that before, getting involved directly with customers if they don't get the level of service that they should from Volkswagen. Full stop. They should deserve an excellent level of service after investing their money in a Volkswagen product, and I live by that.
I have personally seen Alan send messages on social media to customers when things haven't gone. But it's funny, I have the subscription service for something to do with my YouTube channel, and last week there was something that wasn't working with it, and today I got an email from the company said, we're really sorry, we made a mistake last week and it wasn't available, here's 2 months extra free, so you're getting 14 months instead of 12. And that's all it took to kind of go, all right, fair play.
Yeah,
and then you move on, you know.
Absolutely. I remember back to one of my first, and again, I think Paddy, you might have been, we had a customer that timing chain broke, and he wasn't getting the service that he should have been given, and we got involved and we sorted it. And it's about, if a customer is going to stay with you for life, you have to give them that level of service and ownership of problems.
Of course, it's one of those things that, you know, someone goes down to the pub and tells their mates, you know, what they're going to tell them, you know, especially if it goes wrong, but they're also going to tell them as well if it goes right. And
I suppose that's where, is it kind of like, so everything Liffey Valley here very much controlled with the brands, but then your brand goes out to a dealer, and when things do go wrong, you can't always be in the dealership. Unless it's brought to your attention, it's out of your control, and you have to just kind of trust them to manage and be responsible for your brand.
Yeah, I think trust is the word there that I would pick. You know, we could put standards in, and we have very high standards on how a Volkswagen dealer operates. But the one thing is to trust them to do it, and we have 29 passionate dealers. Some of them 73 years with the Volkswagen brand just after it started. They didn't start yesterday, and they are the best in the automotive segment or sector in Ireland, and I trust them. And that's why we see them dealing with customers, but you also have to give them the appetite to be able to deal with customers and do what's right, and gladly they do. They go above and beyond, and nothing that you can write in a standards document or nothing that you can write in a PowerPoint or a bulletin represents what the Irish dealers do. They go above and beyond every minute of every day to deliver exceptional service, and they should be applauded for it.
In terms of doing the after sales role, how important do you think it is to have that grounding within that side of the business before you can go on to roles like you have now?
Yeah, I think, you know, as director of the company and the brand in Ireland, I think it's important that you have a 360 degree, and it's easy to say, and if you read any business book, they'll probably say that. But you need to understand the full life cycle of a customer. It's not about just the day they come in and buy that car off you. It's not about the excitement of collecting that car. It's about the life that they have and the journey they have with you. And that usually goes, on average in Ireland, 4 to 5 years on a new vehicle before someone starts to contemplate change, even shorter on PCP. But it's about understanding each of those touch points. And there's so many touch points, whether that's renewing insurance, renewing NCTs, all the services that we provide to try and assist the customer in having a great experience and a better experience than competitors.
From there, you went to Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, and at the time, I remember from being there, you had a lot of innovation within that brand in particular. Is there a little bit more freedom in commercial vehicles to try things that are a small bit different than you would have, say, in a passenger car model?
There isn't. I suppose, I suppose in commercial vehicles we came in at a time that there was a lot of change coming about. There was a lot of new vehicles, a ramp up. Amarok had never been in the market, so we added Amarok when I came in, and then a number of additions right through to, in recent times, the ID Buzz and other elements like that. I think commercial vehicles, the customer spectrum is quite broad. You have a person that drives a van for services, such as a plumber or a carpenter. You have a person that drives a public service vehicle out of a commercial vehicle, but then it goes to the other extreme where you have campers that live their lives in it. You have surfers that utilise them. So it's a much broader audience with different directions, where passenger cars are passenger cars, albeit you will have people that have different interests. Just commercial vehicles, there's very specific niche vehicles that wouldn't be represented in the passenger car offering,
The ID Buzz recently launched as a 7-seater. Is it a vehicle that Volkswagen, you think, wish they'd sold more of?
Yeah, we'd love to get more volume out of it. It somewhat represents a niche look, I would say, in terms of its offering, but in its usability and the way it stands, especially in the 7-seater version, it's an amazing vehicle. And I've seen really strong interest in the GTX version that's been launched as a 7-seater, and I think it's a new vehicle into that segment. The segment is nearly recreated from where we came from many years ago with the T1. And Paul and all the team, I know, are working strongly to develop it, but certainly from what I've heard, customer interest, certainly in the 7-seat, which is needed in that vehicle, is driving interest levels quite big.
So 7-seaters now, I think it's about 67, which it's still big money, but when you compare an electric 7-seater in the market, it's actually probably one of the lowest down the price.
And I think all 7-seaters, you're talking 55 plus in most variants, whether it's ICE, whether it's BEV, the range that vehicle offers and the adaptability of the seating plan and everything, it really makes a really iconic vehicle work for the everyday family, So.
And what could potentially incentivize people to look at that as a 7-seater that maybe they're not considering now? Are they aware of it, you think? Could there be more awareness?
I think awareness is there, and I think with the 7-seater is obviously brand new, and Paul has done a brilliant job in bringing it to the market. I think more people are getting in and test driving and seeing it. We are an SUV-dominated market. SUV is what we like, but there's no reason that the ID Buzz can't be a huge success, certainly in the 7-seater format. When you get into space inside, is really, really stunning.
It is. I've driven that GTX version. It's in Germany, but it's bloody quick. Yeah. You don't expect a car that can carry that many people to shift that quickly.
From moving on from commercial vehicles, you've taken the top job of Volkswagen passenger cars. There's a great responsibility, obviously, with looking after or being the guardian of a brand like that, and a big honour attached to that. How do you find the first period of your role, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm roughly 18 months into the role now, and I came at a time of a turbulent marketplace and many turbulent winds coming at all automotive manufacturers, and they continue today and will continue for the foreseeable future. What we've brought is some certainty and new models, and that is the big thing. I think everyone has seen the ID2 and the ID1 that you were at the launch last, but Tyron has come now, and many other evolutions of the current model range, T-Roc being the next one that will come later this year. So we're really focused on just a complete model recycle, and with new models and new segments covered, such as the ID2 and the ID1.
You impressed me last year, especially with your I suppose, honesty about electric, and it was 12 months ago, it has to be said, probably more actually, and it was in a kind of, perhaps not just here, across all brands, was like, what the hell is going on with electric? If you were someone who wasn't sure, with your vast array of petrol and diesel options, what would you say to them? Where would you go and why in terms of your next car?
We talk about BEV, electric vehicles, and range anxiety, and many of the multiple things, the infrastructure is there. I think you can find reasons for EV not to work for you, but I can also find 10 more reasons for every reason that it doesn't work for you, that it does work for you. And it works for everyone, but it is a choice. It's a choice that you need to make. But, with vehicles coming ID7, well in excess of 700 kilometres WLTP, and we can go down. It's viable. Even when we look at the ID1, if we think about that, we're talking about 250 kilometres. We talk like 250 kilometres is not suitable or not real. The average commute in this country, certainly in urban areas, is 32 kilometres a day. That in theory gives you 6-7 days coverage without charging the vehicle. But I'm not saying it is the ideal solution to everyone. It's not as easy as going into a petrol station and filling up. But the future is electric. PHEV will come in, and we met last year and we were open and honest. Things were changing. But if you look at how we've changed things strategically, we're growing market share again. We've over 16,500 people now driving ID models in the Irish market. And PHEV is a stepping stone also for those people that are a little bit uncertain. And I wouldn't blame them being uncertain with all the news that's out there. The people that go against BEV, for whatever reason, I'm not saying they're wrong, but that's their opinion. And you have to respect people's opinions. But PHEV really gives you that optimum, especially with our battery capacity of 120, 130 on one range. Okay, we go from WLTP and we want to be honest, it's probably 100 kilometres real range.
Yeah, but still.
It's 100 kilometres. If you're driving 32 kilometres a day, as the average person does, that's 3 days without charging. 2 charges a week will cover your distance without going on to the ICE engine within that. So I think that's the derivative. If we get a blended retail, so we've doubled our volume of PHEV in the first 2 months of this year. We've grown our market share by approximately 2% in BEV. ID4 is still clear number 1. We're doing all the things that we have to do, but we have to do more. And that's where the new models of the ID will hopefully assist us in the future.
You were at the very forefront in terms of introducing BEVs to Ireland. Volkswagen, way back to e-Golf, probably 10 years ago now. What lessons have been learned from your own perspective, from a business perspective, about the introduction of BEVs? Because no one knew how it was going to go. It was a case of let's see how we went. What were the lessons that you took from the last number of years? 2
of them would come to mind. That BEV was heavily driven in the early part by first adopters. First adopters don't ask the questions because they've usually done a lot of their research in advance, online, for multiple hours and days in some cases. Now the customer that comes in needs to be educated correctly by our dealers, and that's why we've trained dealers every year, substantially, salespeople, after salespeople, in e-mobility and what really is e-mobility, and to be able to answer those questions. Because the customer coming in now wants to adopt, but is not like the first adopters. They want to come across and they need to be told the factual, correct information and not missold the product and then be disappointed thereafter.
I think you make a very good point, because I think at the start a lot of effort was put into educating customers, but as you say, those people who were buying initially knew what they were after, had done their research. We're now in the stage where it's everyone else is starting to come in and look at EVs.
Not in a condescending way. I think there's also probably a huge amount of the potentially buying car public there that are still very confused. And, what is the difference between a PHEV and a BEV? Even something as simple as that. Like, for those that are into cars or whatever, we get it. But I think people with a passing interest, or just a car for me as a mobility solution, their heads are probably fried, So,
and there's such a wealth of information going in so many different directions. You can be caught in one place not knowing where to go. And I think it's up to manufacturers to lead the journey. You've seen our survey. Our survey was professionally done and represented what people driving battery electric vehicles feel. We then came on top of that with numerous training development with staff across all our network and our head office people. But then you see stuff like the approved used. We now certify, because the second cycle is only starting to happen in any mass now. Our 2021 models are coming back after 3-4 year cycles. And the customer now is different because you have a second-hand customer that's buying a 4-year-old. We're certifying the batteries openly, transparently through a testing machine. And you'll see that Europe will follow this in the years to come. They're talking about a battery passport that will show the details of how the charging has been completed on the battery and the condition of the battery. We're doing that today in any of our 29 retailers. They will give you a printout showing you how it's been charged, to what level it's been charged, and what percentage is left in that battery. And in the majority of cases, it's 95% plus after 3 to 4 years. Even in e-Golf, which you spoke about, 2016, when battery technology was in its infancy, is still holding a battery health of above 90%.
I would encourage anyone who was, if range wasn't an issue, what a purchase, because those initial ones were almost hand-built in Dresden at the time. They're incredible cars.
This is kind of crystal ball stuff at this stage, but as you're saying there, sometimes a Volkswagen will have maybe 3 cycles at least Do you think, so if you have a new ID3 or ID4, it's now 3 years old, 4 years old, that car goes into your dealership, goes out again. By that stage, when it comes back again, the 8-year warranty could be up on it. Will dealers have to, or will brands have to create another level of warranty to kind of incentivize people?
I think there's probably a triple answer to it. Extended warranties will be there, certainly, to give customers. We can't expect to deal with cars if we can't give dealers give customers what they're looking for. So I think extended warranty will manage that somewhat. The other element I would say is within 7-8 years, when we really start to see mass second cycles and third cycles, I believe battery costs may even be less. Yeah. Battery technology will have developed. It's moving at a pace that's never seen. And then there's a third option, that battery storage in houses needs batteries. So these batteries, ultimately at the end of the life cycle of the car, they may not be able to power a car in 20 years' time, but there's no reason that they can't take energy from solar panels or from other electricity conversion devices and store them in the house, because that's low demand electricity. You don't need to switch on a kettle the same power that you need to drive an ID4. So those batteries still will have a use for many, many years, and that's part of our way to zero, that we don't just build batteries and then put them aside. They have to have a life cycle that goes on for many, many years to come.
I think it was last year where a lot of the journalists would have had the Golf GTI first, and then I remember you arriving down to automotive team to take it for a spin. Was that your favourite VW to drive in the last few months?
It has, but I'll go up. We don't sell it anymore, and I miss it. But the E-Up in recent years is one of my favourite cars. It handles so amazingly. It's basically a wheel on each corner and a very fast, small electric motor on a very small car. You know, it was ideal for anyone that needed that zip-around car. I really enjoyed it. GTI, of course, and the Golf 4, two brilliant cars. We were in Mondello before, and it's nice to get it off the roads where you can actually drive it on a track, and just a stunning car to drive. The balance, the power to weight, everything comes good in a GTI RDR models, you know.
It is a shame that our emissions have kind of made the Golf 4 such an expensive car now to buy, but the used values on them are like even at 2015, 2016, they're still going for strong money. Like they're going to be sought after for a while. And yes, you're also a fan of the E-Up, Paddy. And if neither of you guys are short, so I mean, if you guys can fold into one of those cars.
Yeah, no, I was in my E-Up this morning, and what a car still, and I drive it from Cork as well, which is a challenge, but it can be done for sure. Talk to us about Volkswagen today and Volkswagen in the future. The current lineup is really strong, but as Mark would have seen over the last couple of weeks, you know, we have some really interesting stuff coming. For people listening, give us a flavour of what's coming over the next period.
We've learned from some mistakes, and I think we openly say that, you know, some mistakes with how we've built the vehicles, how we've designed some of the features on the vehicles, and we've listened to the customers. And I think that goes back to the ethos of Volkswagen. It's about the customers. They develop our knowledge of what we have to do, and you've seen in switchgear and so forth like that where we've made changes. New Tyron is evidence of that, and even the Tiguan before that. I think what comes next for us is T-Roc. It's been an exceptionally strong vehicle for us, and it really covers us in that segment in terms of the SUV offering in the smaller segment. Then after that, we really will expand the ID2, ID2 All, and moving it forward and really doing it. I suppose the justice of having a complete model range from ID7 right down to ID1, and showing it clearly that our commitment is to BEV. Many manufacturers are offering different array of models, but I think this will be the first manufacturer that has such a broad array to cover all vehicle choices.
At the ID1, everyone, which is like, I'd love to know, are they calling it ID1 and why the change? Because even ID2 was ID2 All. Surely on the success now of ID4 and 5 and everything else, they should just call it ID1. But anyway, 9 new models coming by 2027. Now, I'm sure some of that will just be announcements or launches of cars. They may not be on the road yet, but that's only, you know, it's what, 20 months?
Yeah, and brands go through product offensives. It comes in a cycle of replacements, and that's what we're going through at the minute. You know what I mean? Tiguan has been such a brilliant product for us, but the new one is the best Tiguan, in my opinion, that we've ever built, and we cannot get enough of them for the Irish public, and we're delighted to see the success of it. Tyron, the future is using technologies, using innovation we brought in augmented reality to launch Tayron in our dealers because we didn't have the cars physically here. Before the first car arrived in the country, we had over 350 sold.
Wow.
Not one of those customers had actually physically touched the car, they'd seen it online, but using technology such as augmented reality, and this is the future, new innovation being used in our dealers, and we've done really well on it. And the vehicles are better and better each time we renew a vehicle. We're learning from maybe things that customers have given us to say, we need this improved, or we need this. And ID7, if you look at it, it's a car that 3 years ago would have been €100,000 plus luxury car, and now we've adopted that in to a sub €60,000 car, and that is the real benefit of listening to customers, trying to find the innovation and technology that we can drive forward.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Tayron in the flesh. It's and the versions they had at the launch, they weren't, well, there was an R-Line there if you wanted, but the bread and butter car, if you like, was one trim level up, and just the touch and feel of it is pretty good.
Yeah, I think the R-Line, with the specification that we've got, we've moved a lot of specification on the R-Line models. We have, across the entire range now, we have 75-year edition models, so each one of them is loaded with a lot more specification to celebrate this year. As I said, we have to make a mark this year to say we are Volkswagen. We're 75 years with the Irish people, the 250,000 people that are driving us, and the people beyond that want to drive us. We're going to give an offer, and the specification levels have never been so high.
In terms of the customer experience at the moment, what are you hearing from dealerships? Is PCP still a huge driver of sales for you guys, or has there been any change in how people are acquiring their cars?
Yeah, no, PCP is still a key driver, obviously because you can split the payments up and reduce your monthlies. And Irish people, I remember launching PCP 15 years ago, and I remember people saying that'll never work. And now today, 2 out of every 3 cars we sell is on a PCP product, and they're returning customers. Usual term is 30 months, 31 months, but usually people change before that 3-year window even expires on PCP, and we're managing that. The other thing, we have the strength of our own bank located downstairs in this office, and they're there to actually help us and assist us in driving these products in. But when you look at PCP, the RV is guaranteed by the bank. Some manufacturers in this country use the dealer to guarantee the RV. We have a bank that's bound by the Central Bank of Ireland, and that is a real strength to us, and that's why we push PCP, because it's a really good product for customers.
Tell us a little bit about your own style, leadership style, I suppose. In running a business like this, it's a big operation. You're managing a lot of stakeholders. You have a lot of dealers. You've got a staff internally. You're also, I would say, someone who's very tuned into the marketing and PR side of things. Tell us a little bit about your own philosophy in terms of running a brand like Volkswagen.
You want to be the best brand in whether that's the Irish market or across Europe. You have to approach it with the right way, and you have to lead in that way. You have to act as a leader, and I'm delighted, funny enough, we're just after coming through International Women's Day, and within the brand we have more females working in the brand than males, which is a real testament. The other thing is the management team, and all the members of the management team. I think we're the only automotive brand in Ireland to have a 50-50 split between female and male members of the management team. It's a real focus that I have. Talented people deliver talented results and deliver brilliant results in my management team and every single staff member out there. And I try to lead by example. I try to drive them. I think, outside this, I push myself. I'm a board member for Jack and Jill Children's Foundation. I joined them 11 years ago. I try to give as much back because I believe, what goes around comes around. I'm a great believer in that with dealers. Dealers know me for 27 years. So when you add all of them things together, you have to be someone that represents a professional offering of what the brand should do. You can't say to someone, do a brilliant job with that customer if you don't try and do a brilliant job yourself, whether that's with a staff member or a dealer or someone else, press, motor and press. I wish you could do it better every time. You try to do it better. You wish you could touch everyone. You can't. But you try and push yourself as much as you can.
Mark, we had Ray Lady on a couple of weeks ago.
We did. Yeah, a man who's familiar with this parish, and obviously, look, it's a great place to be. Both Skoda and Volkswagen have had such strong market share in Ireland. But Skoda, for such a closely related competitor, essentially, can come very close to VW share. And what was Ray's answer? He said, I called them our frenemies. I think he said something along the lines of that. So is the feeling mutual, Alan?
Of course it is mutual. I encourage competition, whether that competition is in-house or whether it's outside. Competition is what drives the performance of any good product or brand in Ireland or further afield. But Ray is right. Ray and all the team at Skoda, I'm delighted for them. They're part of our group. They're what make Volkswagen Group Ireland such a big group. 30%, 1 in 3 cars nearly in Ireland are delivered out of this group. Skoda have had a phenomenal run, going from 6% historically up to 8%, 10% and above in recent times. And they've had an amazing product offensive and product cycle change over the last number of years with brilliant vehicles. Yes, they're close to us, but that's brilliant. That can only be seen as a good thing. Together, if you add ourselves and Skoda, 1 in 4 people in this country buy either a Skoda or a Volkswagen. That's a strong statement when you add the market shares of the brands together. Will they come close to us? Of course they will. But that challenges us, and it's an internal challenge that has to be held if we're going to be competitive. We have a long road to see ourselves into the future of automotive mobility between now and 2030 and beyond. So we need to challenge each other, and it's a lot of fun with Ray and the team and Skoda some days, and some days more difficult.
It doesn't sound like there's too many awkward moments at the water cooler, at the coffee machine, Paddy. It sounds like it's all fine and dandy once everyone's selling cars, which is the main thing. Actually, just as final question, as you were touching on kind of your philosophy and your roles, obviously someone once said to me before, management is about managing up and managing down. For your overlords, essentially, is that the bat phone to Germany? Do they call? Do they like to take interest? Obviously, Thomas Schaefer has a bit of an Irish connection here as well. He does technically have an office here, I believe. Yep. So how hands-on are Germany?
I think they're involved. We're seen as a significant market for we're obviously owned fully as a national sales company as opposed to a private importer. They take a very avid interest with plenty of phone calls, different times of the month. But they're focused on one thing, and that is driving the performance of Volkswagen in this country. That ultimately drives the performance to the customer and gives them what they want. And they take on board what we feed back, and they try to develop solutions for Ireland that sometimes aren't the solutions for other countries because of our CO2 taxation. We have to be slightly different. We have to look, where you can go to the UK and put 20-inch alloys on something, we may need to put 18-inch alloys, because if you put 20-inch alloys, it goes up 2 bands in taxation. So they know the Irish market. They work very closely with it. Thomas is a great supporter, and it's brilliant to have him in our country. But ultimately, Thomas isn't involved in the day-to-day running. It's more so my sales region, and they're hugely proud of it. Next week, we go to some importer awards, and we're hoping Ireland might be lucky enough for the first time to take one of those awards after the performance has been brought about. So fingers crossed there.
Well, Paddy, if you see a man in a very nicely restored Beetle driving around Dublin, it's probably Alan. Give him a wave.
Alan, thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Motors, with Ireland's widest selection of cars for sale from certified trusted dealers. The right car for you is on dundeel.ie. Mark, a topic we haven't covered yet in the podcast, and one we really need to look at, is the ongoing issue of road safety. We know that the figures for this year are on the right path, but something I wanted to ask you, and something you and I have talked about before, is the messaging that's especially out there for younger drivers. We know from the statistics that young males are the most vulnerable group when it comes to road fatalities. Do you think that the messages that are being put out there are reaching or landing these people?
The obvious answer is no. However, I'm not naive enough to think that there aren't targeted ads available to companies, and if they're not already doing this, then maybe this is the light bulb moment. But surely they've thought of this already. So, are people under the age of 22 getting Snapchats about car road safety? Are people maybe on? Have you ever seen an ad on TikTok for road safety, or seatbelts, or phone use, or?
Yeah, I have, but I just don't know whether they're necessarily coming from their peers. They're often they're often a bit preachy, or they're they're condescending, or they're they're lecturing, and I don't know if they're necessarily educating in the right way. Do I have the right answer? Not necessarily, but I feel that especially this one size fits all messaging isn't working. And certainly look, the figures have improved greatly. I mean, in 2024, 172 people sadly lost their lives, but this was 365 back in 2006. So huge progress has been made, but we're still seeing the same people, the same types of roads where the incidences and fatalities are taking place. So something is still off.
I think we could definitely do more in school as well, and maybe, as you say, it's trying not to be preachy. We can all remember being that age, and there's nothing worse than a grown up, so to speak, coming in telling you what you need to do and not to do. So, is there someone that people look up to who could maybe do a tour of schools, or multiple people who could do a tour of schools? In fairness to them, Opel have ran quite a clever thing in Mondello for the last few years, where they will let you drive a car with an instructor from the age of is it 16 or is it younger? I think it's 16.
No, it's much younger than that.
Is it?
Yeah, it's definitely younger. Yeah, I think it might be as low as 12. But yeah, you're right, and I think it goes back to the point about driver's education. The sooner you can get people into cars, as soon as you can get them to feel what it's like to pilot a heavy vehicle on a road at various speeds. I think that the kilometers clocked up when they're younger really has a positive effect.
Sticking in my mind, one of the most tragic road crashes over the last few years in Ireland was the older brother who was bringing the younger pals, and I think one of his siblings. There was a leaving cert event, and the car skidded, and there was a lot of fatalities in it. But the report came out, I'd say, in the last 6 months, and the car wasn't a particularly old car. It was a BMW coupe, but things like the tires were worn down to the metal on the car. And I know it's probably deeply upsetting for the families involved in these horrific, life-changing accidents, but there is a little bit of learning when you hear some of what contributed to the crash. There was really heavy rain. There was, a multitude of factors, like a lot of accidents, not just one thing. It's just deeply.
I think you've hit on a really good point there, Mark, because we don't get the full details. And maybe that's to protect the families, or maybe that's for inquest reasons. But you don't often see that. We hear news reports. Okay, there was an accident over the weekend, single vehicle accident. We don't hear anything else. If we were told the vehicle hit a tree, the tires in the car were faulty. That sort of information I think would be much more useful for people to learn, because even if it's the message started seeping in that way, it's more useful than just, okay, one person died, there was an accident, and then we hear nothing else of it.
That's it. I mean, even if they could kind of make the statistics is not really the word, but just the factors a little bit more generic, so you maybe can't relate them to a specific fatality to protect that person's dignity and their family. But I do think we could do more to play out the scenario that led to a lot of like what is the biggest of the number of 100 odd that you listed there? Is it head injury? Is it seatbelt, not wearing seatbelt? To me, it doesn't feel like seatbelt use lack of it is an issue. Certainly phone use, yes.
I was looking at the 2024 report on the Road Safety Authority website. So 172 people lost their lives, and that was compared to 180 in 2023. And 74% of the fatalities were male, 26% were female. Highest age group was 16 to 25, 28%. The time of day, almost a quarter of fatalities occurred between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And the weekends are the most dangerous. 47% of the fatalities took place at weekends. So, there's an amazing amount of data out there.
That is a lot, yeah.
But I'm not sure it's being used in the right way. You talked about seatbelts. 50% of the fatalities, there was evidence of seatbelt use. There was 5% had no seatbelts, but then it was indeterminate whether the others had used seatbelts or not. So, which is a strange figure to read, that such a high percentage they couldn't tell. That was interesting.
Take it from someone who's been hanging upside down in an overturned car with a seatbelt mark right across their jacket, and I can still remember the force of your body trying to pull you down with gravity, and the seatbelt just totally locking you into place. I mean, the idea that someone would get into a car and not have one on is just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But as you say, there's a lot of info there. is someone kind of forensically going through that information and trying to make awareness, whether it is tires, phones, distraction, taking drugs, whatever it is. I mean, even if you look at some of the Garda activity over the last couple of years, they launched their fleet of Golf GTIs. They didn't shy away about it. They they have that Golf R branded car with really high visibility. Um, I think I even saw a Garda tractor at the ploughing last year. I think the Golf R was there as well. But they're trying to, I suppose, level with these younger fellas who there might be a little bit of speed. And look, Paddy, I'm sure you're the same. I was lucky enough to have some nice cars when I was in my 20s, and was I always an angel? No, but I always felt things were calculated in terms of okay, I might push on here, but it's a quiet road. I know it, whatever it is. Not the right answer either, but we'd be all naive to assume that everyone who gets the keys to a car is going to be on their best behavior all the time. There's bravado, there's testosterone, there's showing off. That's just lads. That's never going to change.
No, it's not. And it's interesting to see the recent campaign of where they dropped the speed limit on rural roads from 80 kilometers to hour to 60 kilometers per hour in many cases. They had some statistics around that which were interesting as well. So they said between 2019 and 2023 there were 69 driver fatalities and single vehicle collisions in private cars on 80 kilometer roads. Of the 69 drivers who were killed, 59% were aged 16 to 35 again. 56 drivers, 81% were male. 47 drivers were the only occupant in the car at the time of the collision, and 33 drivers lost control of the vehicle. So there's some rationale behind the drop from 80 to 60. Will it be policed? Will there be detections on these roads as a result of this drop? I don't know. And then that's been a lot of the feedback on social media when you see it, is that this isn't workable, because truth be told, lots of people feel they won't be caught.
Yeah, the Garda numbers for traffic court maybe aren't there. I don't think it's directly linked to the fatality aspect by any means, but also the red light braking is just, it's crazy. I don't know what, it's like as if the last 5 years someone just decided, right, we don't do red lights anymore in this country. You have like a 3-second grace period where you can drive through that red light, nothing's going to happen. It's just weird. But also someone who's a bit of an industry legend in these circles, Aidan Doyle. I met Aidan a few months ago, and Aidan worked in the marketing end of automotive for all his career, pretty much, bar a brief stint in the FAI, I believe. And he made a point when I last met him. One of his daughters had passed a driving test, and he said, "Just give us a look there at what you got in the post." And it was just a certificate of competency and your license. And he just posed the question: you're given, a lot of the time it'll be a young person getting that license, and fair play to them for passing their test, but they're getting the keys of the castle there, and there's no words of wisdom or advice or a reminder of the responsibility. It's just, here's your license, knock yourself out.
But I guess it goes back again to the, should they have had this grounding when they were 13, 14, 15 in secondary school, so that, they are been given the benefit of the doubt when they are competent enough to pass their test at a later stage. But as you say, there can be lots of people who are passing their test who haven't really had the miles or kilometers under their belt. And that might be leading to some of the problems. Look, we know, without getting too biological or psychological about it, we know, brains aren't developed when they're teenagers or adolescents, and that there's a lack of sense as well. So I don't know, we're going to have to find a way to try and reach to reach them, and I think earlier tuition is the way forward.
I think that is something we could definitely do more of. I know certainly when my kids are old enough, they'll be brought to that Opel thing, if it's still happening when they're older, and just to give them a feel. And I've always tried to, like they obviously in my job, see lots of different cars and stuff, and you try and teach them about road safety where you can, but they are still quite young. But I mean, look, we talk to kids about birds and bees in school, so let's talk about something that almost weighs 2 tons and can kill you if you or other people if you don't treat it with respect.
I think it'd be good for us to do this again. We might get someone from the RSA on. We might get someone from An Garda Síochána on. I think it'd be interesting just to hear the stories of what they see out on the roads as well, because we have one viewpoint, but it'd be good to hear from An Garda Síochána in particular to see what they're facing out in the roads.
Yep. I can only imagine. Well, we squeezed a lot into this episode again.
Yeah, we did for sure. But certainly if you want to get in touch with us and have some feedback, do email us on driversrepublicpodcast@gmail.com.
Paddy's a great man for email addresses. He'll check it. I'll probably forget. Next week on the episode, I was going to say the show episode. Next week on Drivers Republic podcast, we will be talking about the Dacia Bigster because I'll have just returned from Marseille, where I'll be driving that car. So it's the first Dacia ever to have a sunroof.
I know. I've hung on that from your videos previously. I remember you saying that before. It's the nugget of information about the Bigster that I've held on to for dear life. So thanks for that.
So I'll let you know what it's like and lots more. And look, thanks for listening. Feel free to share this podcast with anybody. I was talking to someone recently, just briefly before we wrap up, who watches and listens to all their podcasts on YouTube. So it's something that we might look at getting the podcast onto. Not necessarily video. Video, this guy was like, oh, video would be great as well. I just don't know if anyone needs to see us in our little spare rooms.
Yeah, we can look at that at a later stage. But it would remove some of the mystery, I think, for us.
On that note, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Take care.